Welcome to another explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive, honestly, life-changing paradox. We're going to look at how to intensely engage in your work, your passions, your big goals, while simultaneously finding absolute peace in the results. I know, it sounds totally contradictory, right? To care deeply, but then kind of not care at all about the outcome. But mastering this balance, it is the absolute key to both high performance and true inner peace. Okay, let's dive right in by asking a question that I think hits home for all of us. Have you ever cared so much it actually hurts? Think about the burnout, the stress, the sheer anxiety we face when life's timing or the outcomes we meticulously planned just don't pan out. We pour our hearts into a project or a relationship or a career goal, and the second it hits a roadblock, we just completely spiral. This right here is the core tension we deal with every single day. On one hand, we have intense focus, that beautiful, productive drive to actually achieve our goals. But pitted against it, anxious clinging. That's that exhausting fear of failure, the fear of loss, or honestly, just the fear of not being enough. So today, we're going to learn how to literally sever the link between these two, using a mix of psychology and ancient philosophy. All right, part one, the science of flow and the psychology of optimal experience. Let's get into it. Back in 1975, a brilliant psychologist named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi was completely mesmerized by painters who would get so lost in their work that they literally forgot to eat or sleep. He really wanted to understand what was happening inside their minds. So he defined this optimal mental state as flow. And during his interviews, people kept describing this experience using the exact same metaphor. They said they felt like they were being carried along by a water current. In this state, your action and your consciousness completely melt together. You're not forcing the work anymore. You literally are the work. Now, check out this number, 110. It turns out our brains can only process about 110 bits of information per second. To put that into perspective for you, just decoding speech during a normal conversation takes about 40 to 60 bits per second. That is nearly half your mental bandwidth just to listen to someone talk. So the crucial takeaway here is that when you are fully engrossed in a highly challenging task, it consumes 100% of that 110 bits per second bandwidth. You literally do not have the cognitive capacity left over to worry about distractions or your ego or the passing of time. You aren't consciously deciding to ignore your hunger or your anxiety. Your brain just physically cannot process them because it is completely full. If we look at how our experiences fluctuate, we can clearly see how to trigger this state. If your skill level is low but the challenge is high, well, you get anxiety. If your skill is high but the challenge is low, you get bored. Flow only triggers in that magic upper right quadrant, right where a high challenge task perfectly meets your high-level skills. It has to push you right to the absolute edge of your abilities. And to reliably achieve this optimal state, you need these precise conditions to align. You got to have clear goals so you know exactly what to do. You need immediate feedback so you can adjust your performance in real time. You need that perfect balance of challenge and skill. And, maybe most importantly, the experience has to be intrinsically rewarding. You have to want to do it just for the absolute joy of doing it. Okay, moving on to part two, the philosophy of non-attachment and letting go of the outcome. But wait, what happens when the painting is finally finished, the project is launched, or the game is over? Well, this is usually where we panic. To deal with the results, we have to pivot to the philosophy of non-attachment. Now, this does not mean a loss of feeling, or giving up, or just becoming apathetic. Not at all. This ancient concept is actually about overcoming the emotional clinging that causes us so much suffering. It's about having the ability to step back and refusing to let external events dictate your internal peace. And what's amazing is that this cure for the human condition echoes universally across global philosophies. In Buddhism, we see nekkhamma, which is freeing oneself from cravings. In Jainism, non-possession is held as a supreme ideal alongside nonviolence. In ancient Greek Stoicism, they strived for apatheia, basically eradicating the tendency to react emotionally to things outside our control. The global wisdom on this is practically unanimous. Think about this absolutely beautiful ancient metaphor from the Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita. It says, a lotus flower grows in murky, muddy water, yet its petals remain immaculately clean. We can use that. We can remain deeply involved in our daily duties and passions, and yet remain perfectly untainted by the muddy anxieties and chaotic outcomes of the world. Which brings us to part three, the law of detachment and modern applications for inner peace. Contemporary wellness experts, like the folks at Be Bloomed, teach that there are basically two ways to approach our goals. When we try to force outcomes from a place of fear, like the fear of not being enough, we actually create massive resistance. We grip way too tightly. But when we detach, we release that grip. We literally stop forcing what isn't working, and instead we invite genuine alignment and creativity into our lives. So here is the exact procedure you can use every single day to stop that mental spiraling. Step 1, anchor into the present moment. Look around, just be here. Step 2, release the outcome. You can really only control your own effort and your integrity. Step 3, trust the timing. Sometimes delays are actually redirections in disguise. And step 4, practice emotional regulation. Basically, pause and take a breath before your mind runs away with those crazy worst-case scenarios. I love this quote. I can want something without needing it to define my peace. It perfectly captures the true liberating freedom of detachment. You don't have to stop caring. You can still deeply, deeply want that promotion or that relationship or that big success. But you completely refuse to let those uncontrollable outcomes hold your happiness hostage. Your peace has to come from your own actions, not from the world's reaction. All right, finally, part 4, cultivating the autotelic personality and the synthesis of action and surrender. So how do we actually synthesize this total immersion with complete surrender? Well, Csikszentmihalyi actually identified a specific personality type capable of exactly this, the autotelic personality. Coming from the Greek words for self and goal, a person with this disposition actively seeks out challenges purely for the joy of doing them. For these people, the act of doing the work is the reward itself. The external outcome, the fame, the money, the success, it's all totally secondary. People with an autotelic personality share some very specific traits. They have super high curiosity, very low egotism, and a strong internal locus of control. That means they firmly believe they control their own effort, not the universe. If you can cultivate these traits in yourself, you naturally bridge that intense focus required for flow with the ego-free release required for non-attachment. And that brings us to the ultimate synthesis for a fulfilling life. Immerse completely in the action using flow, while surrendering control of the result using detachment. By grounding ourselves entirely in the intrinsic joy of our present effort, we absolutely free ourselves from the crippling anxiety of the future result. As you step away from this explainer today and head out into your daily life, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Think about the projects or goals causing you the most stress right now. How will you immerse yourself in the current today, focusing only on the joy of the effort, and just trust the river to carry you where it may? Find your flow, release the rest, and I'll see you in the next one.